Hey, everybody, welcome to the latest edition of Old Scribes. And say hello to my partner, George Willis, who's in sunny Florida and enjoying the way. What's the temperature today, George?
It was a nice and brisk, about 75,
Woo!
76 degrees
I don't.
outside, very sunny,
I don't know if I could take that.
typical South Florida day.
That's right.
Nice day, nice day.
Well,
No
good.
snow.
Here is about 20, which is a nice day for Chicago.
Yeah.
So in January or February,
Mhm.
rather.
Yeah.
But today we have a very special guest, John Iceman Scully, the former light heavyweight contender, former analyst for ESPN Classic, and most known for his work with former disadvantaged fighters, and currently one of the best trainers in boxing, training one of the best fighters in boxing, Artur Beterbiev, and also the former trainer of Chad Dawson, former light heavyweight great. So, Ice, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I appreciate it very much.
Yeah. So talk about your training with Arthur. I mean the fight is February 22nd. Not that long ago seemed like a long time away, and now it's less than 3 weeks away. So how's training going?
Really well. I'm really happy. We actually just had a nice conversation today, myself and Mark Ramsey, and we were saying how we feel much better. You feel much better at this point as opposed to the last training camp. Every fight is different. Every fighter is not exactly the same every fight. Sometimes you're at your best, sometimes there's issues. He was coming off the knee surgery last time, and I don't know if that affected anything, but he's definitely he's got more spring in his legs and all that type of thing for this fight.
Well, the first fight, razor close. A lot of people had it going. Depending on who you asked, one guy or the other, it was really one of those kind of Hagler Leonard fights where people saw it many different ways.
Right.
Without giving too much away of your game plan, do you think this fight will be similar to the last one, or do you what are you kind of expecting this time?
I would expect it to be different, and I'll say there's things that we need to be different. There's certain things we need to do differently. We started a little too late last time, probably, but the fight went the way we probably expected to a degree, just based on both guys' history and on their talents and their strengths. And I think actually one thing I feel good about, adjustments need to be made. And I think we have a better chance and better ability at adjusting and changing what we need to change as opposed to what he could change. I don't think he could change a whole lot without making himself more vulnerable to us. He can't move more than he did last time. If he does that, I don't think the judges will give him any credit. It'll look like he doesn't want to go combative. So I would say we have a better chance at adjusting in a stronger fashion.
Well, doesn't he have to change? I mean, he lost the fight, so he's got to do something
Right.
better or find a different approach. Won't he have to come out of that style and like you said, make himself more vulnerable?
Right. Well, that's the thing. It all depends on how much he's willing to risk. Because clearly, and look, I respect him as a fighter 100%. I think he's a top class fighter. His skills are remarkable, all of that. But speaking as a boxing person, I thought the last 4 rounds, he showed he wanted to box, but he didn't show that he wanted to do whatever he had to do to win. You know what I mean? He did not show, like, whereas Arthur was trying to do whatever he could do. He was trying to get it done. And when you fight someone who moves that much, it's easier said than done. It's not easy to track down a guy who does not want to engage. And I thought it got to be too much. Like at the end of the fight, I was almost like, man, I'm surprised this guy's moving so much. I'm surprised at his level. I'm surprised he doesn't have a better answer. I have an idea personally. If I was on his team, I know what I would tell him. I don't necessarily want to tell you here on the air, but I have an idea, and I think it's one of the few, if not the only option he would have, because like I say, he's not going to say, okay, this fight I'm going to bring it to Arthur, I'm going to take it to Arthur. He can't do that. There's no way he could do that. He can't move and say, okay, I'm just going to be super elusive for the whole 12 rounds. He can't do that, because one, just because of the way it would look, but also you try to do that with Arthur. Arthur is on you all the time. He's in front of you all the time. It's hard. It might be impossible to get in that type of condition to be able to essentially run from Arthur for 12 rounds.
Wow.
You, we spoke yesterday and we talked a little bit about this, but Arthur, who you've been with since 2016, correct?
Yep.
Seems to be is just one of those fighters who is just he's different than certainly most of today's fighters, and certainly one of the more well-conditioned and just, strong and beast-like fighters that have come around that I've ever seen. Right? He seems impenetrable.
Yeah.
What makes him like that? What are how does a mere mortal get to be Arthur Beterbiev?
My theory, it's just strictly my theory. I've never talked to him about it, but my theory, I believe, now I'll say this, people in that part of the world, you're talking about Croatia, Russia, all these places, Kazakhstan, and, I know for a fact they're built different, because I deal with sparring partners all the time. The guys that come over to spar with Arthur and fighters I've met, and I talk to them. I don't just talk boxing. We talk about life, and their mentality is totally different. I think if there's anything good about growing up over there is you're going to grow up with a mentality required. That's similar to Khabib, the MMA guy. He's from where Arthur's from. Same type of mentality. I just think Arthur, when they say built different, most people aren't built different. Even when people say they are, they don't even know what it means. But believe me when I tell you, Arthur is built different. Like this man, I don't know. I assume I told you. I've done a few interviews. I assume I was telling you about when he fought Joe Smith, and he won the title. He added Joe's WBO title, and this is after 8 weeks of training camp. That was on a Saturday night. He goes home Sunday. In the gym Monday morning, 8 o'clock. I have it on video. 8 o'clock. It means he had to get up at 7 to get there and get ready. He has this thing he does where he has these miniature sledgehammers. They're like a foot long, and he pounds on this truck tire that's on the wall. It's an eye level truck tire, and he bangs on it for 3 minutes nonstop. And I've done it just to see, and it's really hard, right? He does that for 8-10 rounds, 3 minutes, no problem. He was doing that 7 o'clock in the morning, 2 days after the fight. You know who else does that? Nobody. There's nobody on earth doing that. So I asked him during training for the last fight. I was thinking about it. I said, Arthur, why'd you do that? Like, what was that all about? And he's like, what do you mean? I go, being in the gym 7 o'clock in the morning, 2 days after the fight. And he goes, I was training. I go, yeah, but I mean, like, nobody does that. And he goes, well, I don't know. Like, he doesn't know what to tell me. Like, he trains. That's what he does. Like, it's nothing out of the ordinary for him. But if I told anyone I've ever trained in my life, if I said, hey, now you won the WBO title and added it to your IBF title and your WBC title. Now get up tomorrow and I'll meet you at 7.
Mm-hmm.
There's nobody doing it. There's
Not
no one,
happening.
Yeah. But he did it on his own. This guy did it on his own. So in a nutshell, that's where he's coming from.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
If you compared, I mean, that might be a little unfair, but fair. Like Chad Dawson is a totally different kind of fighter,
Right.
probably totally different kind of mentality.
Yes.
Just
Well,
talk about training the two different types of fighters.
okay, I'll tell you the ultimate difference. Now, Chad is a very skilled guy. You know,
Yes,
Chad's good. Like I'm not saying nothing ever against
Mhm.
Chad's skills. You know, but
Absolutely.
the longevity, the mentality. Like Chad was pretty much washed up at 30. You know, he was done.
Mhm.
He was done
Mhm.
at the top level. You know, Arthur's 40, just about 40, and he's undisputed. You know, it's a different world. But the
Yeah.
thing about Chad, the difference was, and it worked for him, but Chad didn't go to the gym ever until it was time to train for a fight. He never went to the gym. Like if he fought January 1st, he would not go to the gym until they called him. And if that meant he doesn't go until May, then he doesn't go to the gym till May. You know, it wasn't his thing. Whereas obviously Arthur, you know, like you don't have to tell Arthur anything. You don't have to check his weight. Arthur's the only guy I've ever been with. You don't have to check his weight. He would be offended if you asked him what he weighs, because you're trying to be sure, right? With all my other fighters, you know, I got to make them, all right, get on the scale. I got to see, because I know you're going to lie. So I got to see what you really weigh. And that's a fact. Myself included, when I was fighting, we lie about our weight. Somehow in our mind, if we lower it in our mind, that means it's okay, you know. But Arthur, he would be offended if you asked him what he weighed, because he's got it under control. He handles it all by himself.
And I guess that's why at his age,
Right.
because he is constantly, you know, other fighters like you mentioned, they tend to, you know, kind of fluctuate in weight because they're not in training all the time.
No, he wouldn't.
Yeah.
You know, and
But with
what I
him-
was also going to say, and I believe this. I believe his devotion to his religion, right? He's what I call a real Muslim. Like I know some guys who are Muslims, and when it comes down to it, they're not exactly Muslims. You know, they don't follow it like this guy. Arthur you couldn't be more Muslim than him, right? And I've always believed that powers him. That's his mentality comes from living the way that a true Muslim lives. And you know, he's not even a boxing fan. You know, he's a family man. He goes home, celebration to him. You know, he's with his family all the time. He goes with his wife's kids. That's what he does. When he won the undisputed title, and I have it on video, we're in the car after. There's like 6 of us in the car. This is leaving the arena, right? He's not even talking. There's no yelling. Oh, it's great. Like he was like, oh, good, thank you. You know, he goes back to the hotel. It's like 3 a.m. We fought at like 2 a.m. over there. We go to the hotel. He had about 4 friends that came from his homeland, guys he knew growing up, I guess. They flew over for the fight, plus his other friend who was there with him. And they sat in the lobby of the hotel. We stayed at the Hilton. They sat in the lobby and just talked to each other. And I walked by a couple times to go to this place that serves food late at night. And you wouldn't even know they were there. Like these guys, they weren't yelling and singing. They were just talking like old friends that hadn't seen each other in 5 years. And that's how we celebrated being undisputed.
Wow.
That's unbelievable. Yeah, he's just, his whole demeanor is one of just quiet confidence.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So just the last word on Bivol. You know, what, you know, I was surprised in the first fight that Bivol was effective early, or as effective as he was. And I think I was also a little surprised by his strength, because I went in there thinking Arthur was a lot stronger, but that didn't necessarily prove to be the case. You know, what do you think? And do you think Arthur thinks that Bivol is the best opponent of his career?
I've never talked to him about it, but I would have to assume, you know, Arthur, Arthur's not one of these guys like, oh, he sucks, he's horrible, like he would never do that. Like he would, I think he would say that, I think he would admit that. But again, we've all moved a lot, right? So just thinking logically, he was moving for a reason. He felt something that he didn't like, because if you fight a guy that can't punch at all, you're going to stay there and work. You're going to bang. So his level of movement tells me he felt something from Arthur that he didn't like. Now, you can train. You can, as a fighter, you can say, okay, I got to be more aggressive this time. I got to work. When you get in there, literally, you could train for 8 weeks planning this out. And you get in there in the first round, you get hit one time with a sledgehammer, and the whole thing goes out the window. Just like Tyson said, like everybody has a plan till they get hit. Believe me, that's fun. Like people laugh when you hear Tyson say that. I'm telling you, that's a fact. That's 100% guaranteed, bona fide fact. You can train all you want to do this plan, and all of a sudden you fight Julian Jackson. And you're training to do all these things. And then Julian hits you, and you feel like somebody from a prehistoric planet came down with a hammer and hit you in the head, and you might die any second. And now you got to plan on following your game plan against Julian Jackson. It's just it's easy to say, but it's a lot more difficult to actually do when you feel power. Power is the equalizer of all equalizers. And I could imagine training to fight Julian, and you say, well, we can outbox him and we're faster. And, you could name 25 things that you're better than Julian Jackson. Then somebody goes, yeah, but what about his power? And you go, man, like, that just throws a monkey wrench in the whole plan.
Now, you were able to cross over into broadcasting and do some things like that in the media. As a fighter, what was your approach to handling and dealing with the media? And in retrospect, now that you've been on the other side, what do you wish you knew then that you know now?
Well, I'll tell you something, right? I don't know. I've never heard anyone other than me really express this, but I will say this. It's kind of crazy when you ask a fighter before the fight, how do you feel? How did training go? Right? Because there's, I could get hit by a car, right? The day before the fight, spend 8 hours in the emergency room, and then get cleared to fight. And as I'm walking out of the hospital, a guy goes, hey man, I see you're fighting tomorrow. How do you feel? I feel great. And believe me, we mean it when we say it. Like, we're not lying. We say it because we mean it. And we may, like, deep down, if you, like, after the fight, the reality is, man, I wasn't ready. Like, I fought fights in my own career where I knew, in hindsight, I knew there was no way I should have even fought with either an injury I had or weight loss was horrible. But at the press conference, and it's indicative of something. I always thought it was amusing when people asked me, how you doing? Before the only fight I ever got stopped, I had a horrible, it's too much to go into, but I had a horrible, if I told you what happened to me in training camp, you would say I'm lying. You would say I'm just making excuses, right? But it was horrific. A couple of days before the fight, we do the weigh-in. We do the press conference. And one of the guys asked me, so how do you feel? And I started to answer, and it just hit me. And I was like, it's kind of a crazy question that you ask me. Right? I was out there at that moment. I was in a different world, right? And I'm like, it's kind of a crazy question. I go, what do you think I'm going to say? I said, whatever you think I'm going to say, that's what I'm going to say. Because I've never, ever said, yeah, my weight has been really difficult. I've been in the steam room for 17 days in a row right now. I'm very depleted. I have no fluid in my skin at all. And if I get hit right here, which happened against Tim Littles on the Bo Holyfield on the card, I had no fluid in my body, and I got cut here, 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 and here by the 6th round. but I would never say anything about it. If you asked me before that fight, I was like, "Oh, I feel great. I'm awesome. Don't worry about me." That's why it's a funny thing. That's why when you interview a fighter after the fight and he tells you all these things that were wrong, and people will say, "Oh, you just made excuses." I say, "No, man. He's been holding that in for weeks. He's been wanting to tell somebody, but he couldn't. He had to lie to you all. He had to lie every time they asked him how he felt, and now it all comes out. So on that note, Arthur's looking great. Everything's fine. He's a beast, and that's it.
That's amazing. That's amazing. That's great. That's great.
John, in your career, and you fought some huge names. Michael Nunn, Rogiani, Musk. For the world title in his homeland.
Yeah.
And you were greatly outsized in that one, correct? I mean, that was he was a giant.
I remember at the press conference a few days before the fight, and they had us face off, and I walked up to him and I'm looking and I'm going, there's no way this guy can be 175 pounds. I struggle to make 175 pounds, and this guy comes in a pound under all the time. I don't understand how this could be. He was so tall, and unfortunately for me, see, I'll tell you the difference between him and Michael Nunn. Michael was almost as tall as Henry, right? But Michael was an American fighter. Michael came from the streets, right? So I was talking to Michael during our fight, and I knew early on that I would get him to go toe to toe with me, because if Michael Nunn boxed me like he did Frank Tate, and when he was on his bike, he's almost impossible to hit. You know what I mean? You're not gonna hit Michael Nunn. Some of the best fighters in the world didn't touch Michael's face. So me and Michael, we got into it, and I knew he'd be like, "Oh yeah, okay, let's go then." So he fought me on the inside, which he was a very good inside fighter. Henry Mosky, I slammed on his toe in a clinch, trying everything, because my only prayer to beat him was to fight on the inside, right? And he looked at me like, "Are you silly? Like, you really think I'm gonna fight on the inside?" Like he was so disciplined. It was impressive. I was actually impressed as the fight was happening. I was like, "Man, this guy's a disciplined, true professional." And I think similar to Arthur in the way of, like I was saying, guys from that part of the world, they're not insulted. You say, "Oh, your mama." You tell that to a kid in the hood, you're going to be fighting at the press conference, right? Guys like that, they think it's silly. They think you're immature for saying something like that. So it's a different mentality.
Wow. Yeah. Talk a little bit about fighting at the Garden in Boston. That had to be pretty special.
Well, here's the thing. And again, I always say, people call it excuses. I go, listen, I call it factors and reasons, right? And it would take too long for me to describe this to you, but I'll tell you this. When I fought that fight, and it was a big, like, I get what you're saying, like Boston Garden, this is insane. Like, I'm fighting at, it's the equivalent, especially in New England, of fighting at Madison Square Garden. Right?
Exactly. Yeah.
I'll give you a short synopsis, right? I go to spar with Charles Brewer for that fight. Charles was fighting and I was fighting. I said, "Man, Charles is tall. Let me work with Charles Brewer." Charles Brewer, about 8 days before the fight, broke a blood vessel in my nose with an uppercut. And I bled for 2 days straight. I didn't realize I had a broken blood vessel. I didn't go to the hospital for 2 days. I bled for 2 days, to the point where, do you know what coagulation is?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's not good.
I did not know what that was. I thought my brain matter was coming out through my nose. I honestly thought something from my head was coming through my nose, because I was like, what is this stuff? And it's thick and it's, I'm blowing it out. I bled for 48 hours straight. I slept on my bed face down with my head over the bed, over a towel, so that the blood could drip into the towel. Finally, I started to feel lightheaded. I went to the emergency room at about 4 o'clock in the morning. They took a stick, like a lollipop stick, and they wrapped it in gauze. They dipped it in some kind of medication. They shoved it up my nose, held my nose, pulled the stick out, and they left it there. And they told me, come back the day before the fight and we'll take it out and you should be okay. That's what I did. No way in the world should I have fought that fight. Like, I was so stupid to do that. But so with that said, I go and I was still conscious. I said, man, this is the Boston Garden, like, Tony DeMarco and all these guys fought here. And I actually sparred with Steve Collins when he fought Sammy Story for the Irish title. It was the only Irish title fight, or the first Irish title fight ever contested away from Ireland. It was at the Boston Garden. And so I sparred with Stevie for that. So being there as an amateur for that fight, I was like, man, and you see all the banners of the Boston Bruins and, it's just the Celtic. It's just incredible. So it was the worst night of my professional career, of my life, probably, like in reality. But I still enjoyed the fact that I was in a historic building. I'm a little crazy like that. Like, I still found something really positive out of it, because it was a horrible day, but I was there. I was in the building.
You fought in the building. What would you say the high point of your career was?
Believe it or not, they talk about professional.
Yeah.
Believe it or not, I had some good wins. I'm very happy about. I'm happy that I had a couple good performances on television. My dream was always to have. It's one thing to have a good fight, but when you can have it on TV and show people the tape, and people all over the world watched it. I had a couple of those, so I was happy with that. But believe it or not, fighting Michael Nunn in a very competitive fight was big for me, because I really respected Michael Nunn. Like, I remember watching him fight Alex Ramos and different Frank Tate, and I was a fan. I was a fan of the guy, and now we're good friends. But I was a fan, and to fight him was kind of surreal. But I stepped my game up that night. It was a good fight, and however you go by Punch Stats, I know that I was told by the guy at Punch Stats that I had the highest connect percentage of anyone ever against Michael Nunn. Wow. Frank Tate, Iron Barkley, nobody came close to me. So I'm very proud of that. But when I meet people for the first time who know me from boxing, they always ask me about Michael Nunn first. That's the first fight I'm recognized for. They want to ask me about that. So believe it or not, that's the fight I have some great pictures of it. Actually, the best picture I have from my career of me landing a punch is against Michael Nunn. Like, the best. I wish I won the fight, because it would go perfectly with the picture, But yeah, probably fighting Michael Nunn, because someone of that caliber, that's, if you can be competitive when a guy like that, that's a nice thing. That's a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
You fought in a very competitive, talented era. What would you say is the biggest difference between the era that you competed in versus today?
I would say the depth. The depth was. I agree. Example. It's incredible. I have the rankings from about 1993 of the middleweight class, right? The top 10 of the middleweight. It was. I remember the ones I can remember, right? It was Gerald McClellan, Iran Barkley, Lamar Parks, Reggie Johnson, Jorge Castro, Roy Jones, Thomas Tate, and like two other killers. Like, the entire top 10 was phenomenal. Everybody in the top 10 was a phenomenal fighter. Like if you could be in that top 10, you'd have to, go through hell to get to the top of it, right?
Mhm.
Nowadays, not that they're not good fighters, but I don't know who they are. Like it's a different world. I don't know if it's the media, but like right now, I remember about a year ago, there was a guy, he was the WBA middleweight champion. And I'm saying to myself, I'm in the game of boxing, right? I'm in the game. Plus, I'm a fan of the game. I've never heard of this guy. I don't know who he is. He's the WBA champion of the world. I don't know who he is. I have no idea. I've never heard his name before. How did he become champion? I could tell you, say back in 1986, right? 1986. You had 86. You had Frank Tate, you had Michael Lajide, you had Don Lee, you had Iran Barkley, you had Robbie Sims, you had Tony Simpson, you had Fulgencio Obel Mejias. I can name you 20 guys from 1985 and 1986. I can't name you two from this 2024. I don't know who they are. So the guys were visible back then. Now you got to pay to watch a guy. Contrary to popular belief, not everybody has money to pay for the zone. I know people. I just found out today. My aunt 2 hours ago just told me, you've heard all about the egg situation, right? My aunt just told me, because I just paid $12 for a carton and a half of eggs, and I'm like, no, they cost it's like $4. She's like, no, I just bought it today. That's $12. So it's a different world. We're a different world. Back then, I knew everybody. I knew everybody. I don't know anybody today. I don't know what's going on in the world today. It's different. It's different.
Wow, that says something.
Yeah.
That says something.
Yeah, for sure.
So what do you think of? Go ahead, George.
Okay, well, I was going to say, talk us a little bit about your charitable work. I mean, you've done a lot of great things in that area.
Thank you. It's funny. Like it started out. I'm amazed. I'm amazed that you know about it. I mean, that's cool that you know about it.
Oh, yeah.
I started out. I believe it was Gerald McClellan. I had heard he needed something, and I said, "Oh man, I have a picture, a post, whatever I had." I said, "Man, I bet you I could sell this and probably send him the money, right?" So I did in like a day. The internet's crazy. It's a day. So I said, "Oh man, this is awesome, right?" So I sent them the money. I sent, Lisa the money, and she was very appreciative. And then I heard about Wilfred and where it really took off. And I'm gonna tell you the full story, just because this guy I was told he didn't want people to know, but it's been like 10 years. But people should know. I'm gonna give him a shout out. I had read, here's how it got started. I read that Wilfred Benitez needed money because the generator at his house in Puerto Rico went out during that hurricane. Remember the hurricane? I think it was 2016. They needed a generator because I guess they had to keep his medication cold and whatever they needed. So they needed a generator. It cost like $10,000. I put a thing up on I think it was Twitter, and I said, "Hey man, everybody, we need to get some money together. I'm going to sell some stuff, magazines, posters. I have signed stuff, memorabilia. We got to help." I said, "Help Wilfred Benitez get some money for this." Max Kellerman, who I didn't even really know. I've met Max maybe once, twice at the most in my life. I know he knows who I am, but we were not friends, right? He sends me a message. He says to me, "How much do they need?" I remember it was a little bit over $10,000 they needed. I give him the information. 10 minutes later, Wilfred's sister calls me. She goes, "Hey, some guy named Max just paid for the whole thing. He just paid for the 10,000. He sent me the money." I go, "Oh, that's Max Kellerman. He's on ESPN." But she doesn't know. She doesn't watch boxing. He paid for the whole thing. right then I said, he's amazing
Wow.
and he cares about fighters. He can't be the only one. And I started putting stuff up, and I've got people on my Facebook. I have an amazing Facebook family. I have 5,000 on each page. So 10,000 total plus followers or whatever. I have people who send me stuff. Stranger guys I just know from Facebook. I don't even know their name, who they are. They go, "Hey, what's your address? I'm going to send you some stuff to auction off to help Wilfred, Gerald, Pritchard Cologne," right? A week later, I'll get an autographed picture of Muhammad Ali. I'll get a magazine signed by Michael Dokes. It's amazing. So I always tell people I call it the joint task force. I have a joint task force of people who help me. And I put up pictures on Facebook that realistically on eBay would take in $80, right? But I do auctions. So I go, all right, and I make it fun. Like I'll say you two guys were bidding on a Muhammad Ali picture, and you say, all right, $25. Oh, that's great. And then you come and go, oh, 50. And I go, oh, hey, I wouldn't take that, man. He's insulting you as a man and your bidding power. And go, yeah, and the guys would be like, oh, how about 75? Before I know it, I've got $300 for a picture that probably would have went for 80. Just because people want to help, and because we make it fun, I antagonize people. I make it like a real fight, and so I've raised thousands of dollars. I just sent, I assume and it's not, I wouldn't tell a secret. Bobby Ches is in some difficulty. He's got cancer and stuff. I just sent him $2,000 about 5 or 6 days ago because he needs money for Uber to take him to his appointments and different, and he's got to pay for his treatments. I guess he doesn't have insurance. He has to actually pay big money. This country is big on charging high dollars, so he has to pay. So yeah, I was able to actually, and let me give a shout out. Christy Martin called me and she said, "Listen, if we can help Bobby, I have a glove signed by," and she listed like 20 guys who had signed it. She gave it to me, and I put it up, and I got 2,000 for it, and that's what got the money for Bobby. So, like I say, joint task force. Christy and I working together, we were able to get that done. So yeah, so that's been my thing. I think it's kind of crazy. I think it's kind of insane that a guy like Wilfred Benitez has to worry about the mortgage, paying the mortgage. And I know Pritchard Cologne's mother, I was talking to her one day and she started crying. And she said, we almost lost the house last month. We couldn't make the payment. And, so it's kind of odd when you get a guy making, these guys are making 100 million now. They're not making 5, they're making 100 million. 20 million is like a pretty decent payday. But these guys are making 100. You cannot tell me there's not a way to start a fund, maybe an annuity or something. Because believe me, when I send Gerald, Pritchard, Wilfred, other guys, when I send them $50, they act like it's $1 million. They call me thanking me profusely, like, thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you. Bobby, I sent that money. He couldn't believe it. Like, he could not believe that money was available just from a glove, right? You can't tell me that these sanctioning bodies can't do something with the multi-million-dollar purses. It's not right. NFL takes care of their guys, the pensions and all that kind of stuff. We have nothing. And when I say nothing, I mean nothing. And it's a bigger story. Like, you take average kid, here's the facts. The average kid that's coming up, that's making big money, he's never had any money in his life. Most of these kids grew up in the hood, or even not the hood, but just lower middle class. They've never had this money. You can't expect these guys to know how to handle their money. The difference is, an NFL player comes from the hood, but he has an accountant. He learned in college, you got to have an accountant. You got to have a guy looking out for your money, you know, telling you this is a stupid move to buy, you know, a house with 9 bedrooms and you only have 3 people living in the house. You don't need a house with 9 bedrooms. You don't need a $20,000 gold chain. A $2,000 gold chain would be fine, but they don't have that. These guys don't have that. And so we need help. We need education. Like somebody. I remember a few years ago, I put up just a random status on Facebook, and I said, if you have a manager and he's charging you 33% of your purse, he should be paying for your equipment. He should be paying for your medicals. He should be paying some expenses. You should be getting money every week. When I turned pro, I learned my manager gave me money every week to pay bills, so I didn't have to work. I didn't have to worry. And I get pros, young pros messaging me, and they're going, "Hey, are you serious?" Like, and they go, "Man, I'm getting robbed. Like, my guy charges me 40%, and I pay my own medicals. I pay for my own gloves." I go, "Listen, I don't know your contract, but you're getting robbed. Like, you're getting robbed. Like, you think Mark Breland and those guys, when they pro, you think they paid for a hand wrap? No, their manager pays for everything. If you're a legit fighter and your manager wants to be involved, he's going to pay. He's going to invest in you. And these guys have no idea. These fighters have no idea they're getting robbed and ripped off. It's bizarre to me, but it's a very real thing. And by the same token, some of them shoot themselves in the foot. And I always tell this story. I don't tell the fighter, but I had a fighter one time. He made the biggest purse of his career. It was $35,000. And I'm telling him, listen, we got to put money into I was going to do a CD at the time. You know, 5% was a pretty good rate at this time.
I remember. Yeah.
You know, I said, look, you're making 35,000. Take 25,000 and put it in a CD and roll it over like a bunch of times. I go, when you're 40 years old, you're going to have some good money that you're never going to have otherwise. He goes, okay, good. Of course, he doesn't do it, right? I promise you this is true. This is a fact. I'm not exaggerating. He blew through that money in 30 days. In 1 month, all that money was gone. And you know what he bought? He bought a scooter. He bought some PlayStation games. He bought a grill. You know, a grill, old grill. He bought a grill. Okay. He blew through that money in 1 month. Now, I can't help him. You know, I tried to help him with the annuity idea, you know, or the CD idea, you know, but he had no education about what the future was coming. I tried to tell him, but it wasn't enough. You know, he's a grown man by then. These college players, the NFL guys, they're taught from the time they're at least 17 or 18. All right, man, you gotta plan for the future. Unfortunately, boxing doesn't have that, and trainers aren't educating their guys. I think a lot of managers, and I think a lot of managers, at least subconsciously, they want their guy to remain a little oblivious because maybe that means he can't check on him and see what he's up to, you know?
I'm sure you're probably right about that.
Right.
Well, how can people help? What do people need to do if they want to help, you know, get with you to help a certain fighter or to help anybody? What do they need to do?
Okay, well, I have the 3 fighters I always talk about, which is Pritchard Colon, Gerald McClellan, and Wilfred Benitez. If you wanted to send any contribution to them, you can message me on Facebook. I have 2 Facebook pages, Iceman John Scully and John the Iceman Scully. You could message me there, and I'll give you their information, either their address or their Venmo or PayPal. If you wanted to help a different fighter, which I have about 4 or 5, who I don't publicize because their situation isn't known to the people, and I don't want to embarrass them. You know?
Yeah.
So if people want to send money to help some of these other guys, then I would do that. you could send it to me and I give it to them. One of them, I think, I know he wouldn't mind. So I've told a few people. So I'll tell you because he's open about it. Pito Cardona, if you remember Pito Cardona, he knocked out Ivan Robinson on USA Tuesday Night Fights. He fought Spatafor for the title. Pito, it's not his fault. He's basically they can't diagnose it officially, but he's got the CTE and he can't drive a car. They had to take his license away. He's in the gym every day. He has a friend give him a ride. He's been working with kids literally for over 25 years. Even when he was fighting, he's been working with kids, and he's in the gym every day, and he doesn't get paid for it. So I help him out. When people send me money, I literally drive right to the gym and I hand him bills. And he and he's funny. I'm glad he can have a sense of humor. Like he would tell you without you asking. He'll go, I got CTE. He'll tell you he's got CTE. He volunteers it, and I don't know. If you remember, he was. I trained him for a little while. Not when he was at his prime, but he was a guy. He exceeded himself. Like he did not have the talent of a world-class fighter, but he was a world-class fighter. Like he beat guys, the best man, when they say the best man win. The best man doesn't always win. Yeah. Pito beat a lot of guys who were better than him. They were better talents. They had a million more times talent, but he could punch and he was tough and he wanted to fight, but he paid a price and now he's affected. So he's the other one that I help. With funds. So and believe me, there's hundreds more. You'd be amazed how many guys. The only reason you don't know about it is because you don't see them. They're not on TV. They're not doing interviews. You assume they did well because they fought for hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not millions of dollars, on TV. Unfortunately, that's not the case. These guys do not have that money left. And crazy to say, the majority of them do not have it. Like Oscar has it, Sugar Ray has it, right? Those guys, they have it. Sure. Believe me, they are rare. There's
a small percentage.
They are rare. There's a rare Sugar Ray or Oscar hanging around. Yeah, that's for sure. It's crazy, crazy but true.
Mm-hmm. Well, Iceman, thank you so much for the work that you do with these fighters. I mean, that's very needed. And thanks for being on. And when do you take off for Saudi Arabia?
I believe we leave the 12th.
Okay.
No, excuse me. The 12th. Yeah, February 12th.
Well, good luck. The boxing world will be watching once again. This is one of the great fights of one of the great pairings of this generation. So good luck. I'm sure it's going to be a great one, and we'll see you down the road.
I appreciate you guys. Thank you.